Thank you very much, fellow Africans, and welcome to today's episode of the Change for African campaign. Being on Tuesday, it's about our second pillar of the Change for African campaign, which is about the potential that we have as an African continent. In particular today, fellow Africans, our area of focus in Africa, I'll be focusing on what we call the economic potential of Africa. We have immense potential in our economic. Our economy has that potential to grow at a very high rate, but it is not happening currently because of one, two, three, and just many reasons that come across. So therefore, fellow Africans, speaking about economic potential, that's a quick statistics about or quick areas that relate to economy and how the economy can be rated in a country or in a continent. In this context, we're speaking about Africa. That today, 60% of the Africa's population actually live in poverty, and another thing is that over 25% of the African youth are actually unemployed. This is to do with the economic status, and then we have over 80% of the Africans actually live in moderate or severe poverty. And the other thing is that the low economic productivity over the last decades, you can term this as 3 to 4 decades, has seen a reduction in the GDP, the gross domestic produce or products, over the years, a reduction of 35% of the GDP, of the growth of GDP over the past decades. And then Africa's real GDP has only been growing at a rate of 1.1% over the past 3 decades, to say from 2000 until 2019 or 1990 to around 2019. Those are decades now. That has been the growth of the Africa's GDP per capita. Actually, GDP per capita. This one is now under a small area, which end up making the GDP maybe of the whole country. And so we still have a lot of questions here about the growth of Africa's economy in the different sectors, because the growth of an economy is contributed to with the different sectors and how different sectors are actually doing. And here now the big question is no longer whether Africa will rise to meet the demands of the globalizing world, but how it will do so while building its inherent strength. That is the big question now, how it will do so, while building its inherent strength. And just a quick take through in this sector, so that actually hugely contribute to Africa's GDP and Africa's economy, and that can be used to measure the potential of Africa's economy as we speak. We have the agricultural sector, we have extraction sector, we have the industry sector, and then we have the services sector. So looking at these 4 sectors, we have much of this sector, but looking at these 4 critical sectors in terms of their contribution or their positive impact to the GDP of Africa and to their positive impact to the economy of Africa to have to grow in a positive in a positive trajectory, they are very key sectors. But looking over the past 3 decades, actually there is either a decline or a stagnation, or if there is if there is a positive difference or a positive deviation, it's very minimal. It's very minimal, because looking at agriculture, actually since 2000 to 2019, those are around probably 3 decades, and looking at that 3 or 4, 2, you can say 2 decades. Looking at the agricultural sector, actually it has been there was a rise, but then it stagnated. Looking from 2000 to 2010, there was a 39%. That is a positive deviation of 9%. And from then 2010 to 2019, there's now a 0 deviation. Actually, it neither declined or improved, meaning there was nothing much maybe to talk about in terms of its growth and adding to the economy of Africa. Looking at the extraction sector, extraction is whereby we are speaking about the extraction of natural resources from the earth, and Africa is immense of that. As we all know, we can attribute to that Africa is a land whereby we have every kind of mineral. So looking at that sector of extraction, there is no decline, or there is no what we call there's not both deviations, no positive or negative, but it's a decline at only 1% over the decades, and that shows is an alarming sign. And then looking at the industry sector, the industries whereby this one now we speak about, because industry can be related to also extraction, because extraction means we are extracting minerals or mining minerals, natural resources. These are resources that most of them should be taken to industries to be able to manufacture, kinds of different things. But then in many terms in Africa, these are not taken actually to our industries, rather are exported in their raw form, so contributing to our industrial growth at a very, very small percentage. Rather, we have had a stagnation over the decades, so 11%, and then there's a 12% increase from 2020 to 2019. That's not 12 but around 10 to 11% increase, whereby a 1% increase, rather, I beg your pardon, from 2000 to 2010 it was an 11%. It's neither increased nor a decline. And then from 2010 to 2019 there was a 1% increase, meaning we had a positive deviation of 1% into 2019. And then looking at our services industry, we have actually there's a very huge decline, because we have a 58, 54, 49. That's a huge decline, 58, 44, 49, meaning from 2000 to 2010 there's a decline of 4%, which is very huge. And then from then to from 2010 to 2019 there's a decline of about 5% of that very critical industry, the service industry. Service industry, it involves many things, which of course these are most of them are intangible form of services. You are receiving a service. These are intangible things actually, so they still have a decline to that. And remember, they have a very huge contribution to the GDP of an African continent. So speaking about economic potential, these are some of the sectors that contribute to our economy as an African continent, and these are some of the sectors that we have to be really very, very cautious about in terms of how we handle them and how we try and invest in these sectors to be able to have them contribute to a GDP. Because an example of the extraction sector or even the industry sector, because these are sectors that go hand in hand, extraction and the industry sector, meaning if we have time to invest, and we have not really time, we have a lot of time, maybe if you have that goodwill, and if you have that sense of it, that when you invest in this sector as a continent, then it will have a very huge impact, a positive impact to our GDP, our economic status as an African continent. Rather, if we are not ready to do that, we continue to languish in poverty, because looking at those statistics are all connected to economy, the status of economy of our continent. Looking at over 60% of Africans unemployed, or 25 not unemployed but live in poverty. Over 25% of the young Africans live in actually unemployed, that ought to say. And then over 85% live in severe moderate poverty. And then it is there's nothing to smile about. So it still calls for urgent reforms. It calls for urgent interrogation to such areas to make sure that Africa will regain and we hold and we own our status. The real status of Africa is that we have that economic potential. We have a very huge potential that can be able to make us to be a great continent in the world. We are the richest continent in the world. So thank you very much, fellow Africans. And that is also about potential of an African continent. Indeed, we have immense potential if we do invest in such sectors. Thank you. God bless you and have an interesting afternoon.